Have you ever imagined being desperately in need of help, yet you keep getting unnecessary questions? This was the case of Terry Gendusa. The woman on the other end of the line is in terrible danger and could hardly breathe, but the 911 operator isn't taking her seriously and believes it might be a practical joke. Who's this woman, and how is she in danger? Let's dig deep into this intriguing case of a kidnapped mom who froze to death. The union of Terry Gendusa and David Larson. Terry Gendusa and David Larson got married in 1996, a long time ago. Together, they led a pretty pleasant life. After a few years, the couple's family expanded, and they welcomed two beautiful daughters, Amanda and Holly. However, Terry quickly discovered that the man she had married, David, wasn't the nice, charming person she had believed him to be. He frequently picked arguments with his wife and was extremely controlling toward her. There was an aggressive side to him. He'd even repeatedly banged Terry's head against the door. Every time he loses his temper, he attempts to make her feel bad about herself and that she should improve so that he won't be upset. The dark behavior of David. Terry fears what he could do. Despite her best efforts, he can get agitated over the simplest of things. Terry was preparing supper one day as normal when David, for whatever reason, became enraged and ordered at her to put the package of spaghetti away from the counter. It's as if he was overcome by a demon. He literally shoved Terry and the 2-month-old baby she was holding away. She realized then that she needed to leave that location. Terry had been putting up with David's violence and held herself responsible for his treatment of her, but she finally realized that he was the issue when he threatened the children. She felt she had to dissolve the marriage in order to safeguard her daughters. On January 31st, 2001, their divorce was officially formalized, but there was devastating news for Terry. Terry tried all in her power to flee, but the judge nonetheless awarded her and David joint custody despite his abuse. She must still allow him to see Holly and Amanda. They left the courtroom on the day the divorce was officially completed. With a pointed glance, David warned Terry that she would come to regret what she had done. Even though Terry had survived years of abuse, she still had danger ahead of her. Every time she had to take her children to see their father, she worried about what would happen to them. How Terry found love again. She can't help but think of David's threats and finds it difficult to put her trust in him once more. After meeting Nick Nikolai, she felt at ease and encouraged, and she started to open up once more. Nick gave her the love she deserved when they first started dating. Nick welcomed those kids as if they were his own, and they became a joyful family. Everything was in its proper place. Terry and Nick tied the knot in 2003. It was supposed to be a happy and celebratory occasion, but she quickly discovered that her ex-husband wasn't prepared to let her go. David had warned her that she would regret her decision to wed Nick. He had once assured her that they were still married, as far as God and himself were concerned. She was therefore disobeying God's will by courting and getting married again. The mystery of Terry's kidnapped. As Terry and David celebrated their divorce anniversary on January 31st, 2004, she had no idea that her biggest nightmare was about to materialize. She was on her way to get her children. Holly, who was 4 years old, and Amanda, who was 6, went to see their father. Terry's husband, Nike, offered to accompany her, but she declined because she was afraid that having Nick tag along might make things worse. Terry wanted to do everything in her power to prevent David from losing his cool in front of the girls, because he had a short fuse. Terry is happy despite having to confront her violent ex-husband. She can't wait to see her girls again and share the exciting news that she is pregnant with them. Terry is eager to announce to her girls that they will be getting a new sibling. She approaches David's home around 10 a.m. and knocks on the door. He responded, and it appears that he is also happier than normal. The girls were playing inside, he informs Terry. When she intervenes to go collect them, she finds them nowhere. There seemed to be a problem. Before Terry could do anything, all of a sudden, darkness fell. All she could recall was the sensation of having her head blasted. The next thing she knew, she was face down on his living room floor. It felt like she was paralyzed all throughout her body.
I was face down on his living room floor. My whole body just felt like I was paralyzed.
Terry's instincts took over, and before she could register what was happening, David was securing her with duct tape. "Where are the girls?" was her first thought. "I'm not going to die. I need to support my girls." She struggles mightily, but she is running out of blood and is unable to flee. She was horrified when David shoved her inside a trash can and began to surround her with ice and snow. She then heard him encircling the lid with tape in order to imprison her. He moves the trash can, fills it with trash, and covers it with a tarp inside the bed of his truck. How can a fully grown human be put in a trash can? But as we delve deeper into this, I'd like you to hit the subscribe button for Unsolved Files, where we bring you cases about life and crimes. Don't forget to like and comment on this video to get more updates. Terry's thoughts were racing. He might be granted sole custody of the girls if he murders her and escapes punishment. He could also do them harm. Terry immediately tries to see if there's anything she can do once she leaves the scene. She saw that David missed the point greatly by failing to see that she was still carrying her phone. The first number she dialed was 911 as she went for her jacket pocket. Terry provides vital information to the 911 operator, including her ex-husband's name and residence, despite their skepticism that it may be a prank call. She was unsure about where he would take her, though. She managed to get on the phone one last time, and she called her husband, Nick. Nick dialed the cops in a panic. He informs them that his wife was kidnapped, although his wife wasn't the only one who vanished. Nick discloses that David brought the kids over for a pre-arranged visit. When Terry returned to pick them up later, they had all disappeared, and the search for the mother and her two girls was becoming more urgent. Terry was being detained against her will, as we already knew. Only God knows the whereabouts of those two kids. Terry was stuck in a garbage can in the back of David Larson's truck while police were on their way to his residence. She managed to force her hand out by pushing as hard as she could, frantically waving in the hopes that someone passing by would notice her. The truck suddenly stopped when David, looking in his rearview mirror, spotted what she was doing. He exited and turned to face Terry, admonishing her to stop fighting. Terry's heart fell as her phone started ringing. As soon as he heard it, he took it from her, and he turned around to get back in the truck after threatening her. Terry has one more hope as they go along. She heard the sound of police sirens approaching them directly, but they continued until the sirens eventually vanished into the distance. As the sirens faded and Terry was being smashed and abducted, she couldn't help but feel as though everything was going to end.
We passed each other up. They weren't looking for the truck that I was on, they were going to his house. At that point, I felt totally helpless.
Meanwhile, the police cars arrive at the residence. The police's investigation. They are unaware that they were just driven by the woman who was stuck in a garbage can and dialed 911. They found no one inside the house when they first arrived, but as they looked around for anything that might be able to help, they discovered that the place was covered in photos of her and David from their weddings. They discover an empty handgun case as well. They believed David to be carrying the gun. More blood was discovered inside the home during the search, indicating to the authorities that Terry and her children were in serious danger. They attempted to ping Terry and David's mobile phones. David lives in Wind Lake, but the signal vanished after they managed to ping his phone in Milwaukee, which is roughly 30 minutes away. Documentation in the residence also indicated that David was the owner of Milwaukee real estate. The police examine all three of the different addresses. When Terry's car was discovered close to one of the residences, the investigators believed they were getting close. Perhaps David was trying to get rid of the car, but he may have left evidence that would help them find what they were looking for. But when they looked inside the vehicle, neither she nor the children were there. They were growing increasingly frantic because none of his properties in Milwaukee had any leads either. A total sense of hopelessness prevailed. All Terry can think about, back in David's truck, is what her ex-husband is going to do to the daughters. The truck abruptly stopped, and she heard her girls coming outside. Heartbreaking decision of Terry. Terry wanted to protect her daughters, no matter how close she got to death, and she made the terrible choice to remain silent at that precise moment. She knew they were safe, since she could hear them laughing and playing, but she also realized that they would be even more vulnerable if they discovered their dad had attacked their mother. Perhaps David became enraged with them. Then David put the trash can down and began piling things on top of it. She had no idea where he'd take her. Terry started to lose hope and wonders if David will continue to abuse her or just abandon her. Subsequently, she perceived a door shut, and all was silent. He took his daughters along with him. She was now cut off from everyone that mattered to her. She waited for a few minutes to be sure he had left before she began to scream as loudly as she could for assistance and attempted to flee. At last, Terry was breathing a little easier, but she was losing strength quickly due to her wounds and the extreme cold. The police were looking for leads everywhere they could at the same time. After an Amber Alert was sent out, they were astonished to discover that David arrived at work in Wheeling, Illinois as usual, driving the same green truck that the police had been searching for. They immediately bring David in to be questioned. He expressed to the authorities his horror upon learning of Terry's disappearance and his desire to assist in any way possible in her search. The detectives let him believe that his act was genuine, so they went along with it. David continued to tell lies, claiming that Terry never arrived to pick up the girls. He claimed to have spent the entire morning at home, but investigators discovered that he was in Milwaukee for 30 minutes after pinging his phone and discovering Terry's car close to one of his properties. David was now becoming uneasy and shifting around in his chair. He started to rub his trousers. He even had Terry's blood on your jeans, in fact. David's performance started waver. Abruptly, he altered his narrative. He acknowledged that that morning Terry had indeed shown up at his residence. He was packing the kids' school assignments into their backpacks. Terry was unaware that he was in his home, even though his back was to the front door. The minute David told authorities, he was shocked that his ex-wife suddenly rushed in and attacked him, and that he had to take essential protective measures, putting pressure on him to tell more and more ridiculous lies. He gestured to a blue dustbin and said he was afraid for his life. Reaching over, he grabbed a baseball bat that just so happened to be there and swung it for dear life, hitting Terry in the face. He said he didn't know why he grabbed the duct tape.
He reached next to a blue trash can, grabbed a baseball bat which happened to be there, and he swung it for dear life, striking Terry in the face. He indicated he grabbed duct tape, but he doesn't know why.
Despite not believing a word David said about his self-defense, the detectives force him to continue speaking in the hopes that he will make more mistakes. They spent hours questioning him, but he refused to provide any information that would have aided them in their search. He was an extremely dangerous person who only cared about himself. He was cold-blooded. Meanwhile, Terry's circumstances have gotten worse. She was still crammed into the garbage can with duct tape, and there was no heat. Terry felt her eyelids begin to fall as her body temperature rapidly fell. She understands that resting would be fatal, yet she still wants to do so badly. Terry was too exhausted to climb out of the trash pail. She was beginning to lose hope that she would go undiscovered. One thing keeps her going, even though she has no idea where David left her. How about my children? Even though Terry was barely surviving, she summoned the strength to push over her kids' opinions. The police were rushing to locate them at the same moment. David was being pressed for information regarding his former spouse and kids. David unearths the truth of his kids. Eventually, he began to crumble when the investigators called him out on his lies. He informed him that he had left the kids with the nanny. After all of his lies, they had a lead on the girls' whereabouts at last, but they had no idea what to expect at the address he provided. The officers cautiously make their way to the house after following their sole lead. They discover that David was, for once, telling the truth.
We found the girls safe at that address, so we knew the kids would be okay. And just happy it worked out the way it did.
It's a significant advancement. The girls were not only secure, but they may also have some knowledge of what transpired with their mother. However, Amanda and Holly both claim that they didn't even see their mother that day, and David has no interest in helping to save their mother, despite having disclosed the whereabouts of the children. The investigators took his clothes and wallet, among other personal belongings. His wallet contains business cards, and the police begin calling every number they can locate. They are not having any luck until they come across a card that completely stops them in their tracks. A card for a storage unit located in Wheeling, Illinois, was noticed by one of the detectives. They were informed that David had spent the day before in the unit. The police believe they finally know where he took Terry. They hurry to the storage unit because they know she is suffering from severe injuries that are still untreated and the cold, and they don't have time to waste. Terry is fading in and out of consciousness in the meantime. Uncertain of how much longer she can endure, she is startled by a sound. She feared that David was coming back to murder her. Terry found in a freezy state. They walked over to the garbage can, removed the tape and everything from the top, lifted the lid, and peered down inside. They were astounded by what they observed. They noticed this destitute woman lying fetally inside the trash can. She had swollen, sealed eyelids. She had a black and blue, bloated face. It was horrifying. Despite being severely injured, bound, and abandoned in the icy garbage can, Terry was amazingly still alive. They hurried Terry to the hospital. After David struck her numerous times with a baseball bat, she spent about 27 hours stuck in the snow and ice. Her core temperature fell below 84 degrees. She was still fighting for her life, but she was far more concerned about this one item. "Where are my kids?" was the first question she asked after awakening.
The first thing I asked when I came to was, where are my kids?
Terry felt a sense of relief when she learned that her children were safe and sound, and that David Larson was in jail. She now understood that it was worthwhile to struggle for her girls' safety. Terry had to deal with a terrible loss in spite of the wonderful news. She miscarried as a result of her suffering, losing the child that she was meant to be celebrating with her family. It was utterly disastrous. Terry made every effort to see the bright side. She and her 2 daughters were both still alive. Terry's toes had to be amputated due to frostbite, but even that news almost brings her relief.
The time that they might have to amputate my legs and my arms below my elbows. I remember my dad saying to the doctor, "Do you really have to take her toes?" I remember saying, "Dad, what's most important is that I'm here and my kids are safe and my kids are here."
David, given a sentence. Following a protracted recuperation, Terry was forced to appear in court to confront David once more, experiencing the agony of losing her unborn child in addition to the ordeal she endured in the trash can. Terry had to continue her battle to ensure that her abuser was held accountable. Terry and her family are at last safe after David Larson receives a life sentence at the federal level. He attempts to scare Terry even when he is incarcerated. Terry refuses to let him control her and doesn't allow his pranks to get to her. He even tries to flee and wants visits with his daughters.
He had a plea. I was very upset about that because I was told there were 100 pieces of physical evidence. There was so much overwhelming evidence that there was no reason to do that. But because the child I was carrying died, they wanted to look back into any record I ever had in my lifetime, if I ever had a miscarriage, and anything like that. I just felt I didn't feel very well served at the county level.
The happy ending of Terry. Terry also strives to safeguard other victims of abuse at home. She visits campuses and speaks with young people about warning signs of an abusive relationship, how to leave, and where to turn for support. Terry also tries to safeguard other victims of domestic violence. She travels to universities and speaks to young people about the warning signs of an abusive partner, how to get out, and how to get help. Even though Terry left David when he began abusing her, the laws did not provide her with adequate protection. Therefore, she is now fighting for victims' rights. Terry became a public face of the effort to adopt Marsy's Law in Wisconsin, which provides greater safety to crime victims at the state and county levels, and the bill was passed in 2020. She's also enjoying life with her own family, and she and her husband, Nick, recently welcomed a newborn baby boy. She is still very close to her daughters, both of whom are now married. She battled to live so she could protect her family and provide a better future for them, and as a result, they realized there was a life worth living. Terry is a survivor who is fighting against all obstacles and refusing to give up. Terry proved that it is always preferable to be determined. But what do you think about Terry's story? Shocking, right? We would like to hear from you in the comment section below. You know what's more? The murdered baby on the beach. Go watch now, it's already on your screen.